Have you ever wished that you had a master floral designer that you could have stand beside you step by step and teach you the process of floral design? My name is Kirby Holt. I'm a master floral designer with more than 25 years of experience in the business, and I want to show you step by step how to create beautiful floral designs with the kits from myfloraldesign.com. I hope you enjoy this video and this series. Have a great arrangement for you today that features just a real eclectic assortment of flowers, really designed after an English garden. The English would have and still do have these gorgeous gardens in their homes where all different kinds of plants are growing together in clusters and clumps. In Europe, a lot of the formal gardens were very trimmed with topiaries and lots of designs, but the English garden style is much more flowing, very natural, and that's what this design today will be. One of the features of an English garden style arrangement is that the flowers and foliages are put in groupings, much like they would be if you were planting a flower garden. You would have groups of different flowers at different levels coming up, and that's what we'll do as we put this arrangement together today. I'm going to start right in the center with a Bell of Ireland. There are two of them, so they're bells of Ireland. But I've just done a little bit of hook on the end of that, because when you put that little hook on and push it into the foam, it really locks it in so that that will stand right where you put it and it doesn't swivel around. And I want that to be my central vertical axis. Now in nature, nothing is perfectly straight, so some of these manufacturer stems need to have just a little bend or twist put into them. So you can just reach in there and bend that with your hands and give it a little bit of a twist so that it looks more real and more natural. That's really the whole point of trying to bring nature and the outdoors indoors by using these plant materials and creating these wonderful arrangements. Now again, I have just used my knife and carved away a little bit of that plastic around the wire stem at the bottom, and I want this one to go in a little bit lower, so it'll stand right beside it, but it'll be just a little bit lower, and that bend and twist has kind of locked that in. Again, I'm giving it, and especially bells of Ireland, when they grow, they do pull and curve and twist a little bit, so it's important for these to make them look real, to give them that little bend and twist. Now with that, I'm going to put this stem of permanent branches. It's a manufactured branch so that it has wire inside, and we can bend and twist that and make it go where we want it to. And all three of these are on the same stem, and I want to use this stem for the height that it has, and I don't want to cut that off. So I'm going to just push that all the way in, and then I can just bend and twist these and get those little branches going where I want them to. And it's important that we kind of work with them until we get that look that we're looking for. Now I may just take one, there are three stems on there. I think I am going to take just one of those off so that I can place it here on the front side and split them up just a little bit, and it'll make it easier for us to get those little tips and branches where we want them to be. I don't want it to look fixed. I want it to look very natural, much as if it has just grown up there together. All right. The next one we have is this thistle. And it's a really interesting plant material, and I'm going to carve a little bit off of the ends of that so that we have the wire exposed again, and in doing that, create that little hook. And I think this one actually has a couple of wires in there, which works to our advantage because it gives us two areas that can grab a hold instead of just one. But I'm pushing that right into the styrofoam here. You can kind of hear that crunch as it goes in, and you know that it's really grabbing a hold real good. Sometimes I'll have my glue gun or my glue pan handy, and I'll just put a little bit of glue on these as they go in. But when you put that little hook and push it in with it, those usually will not let go. So you can be pretty confident of your placements when you do that. Now the next thing I'm going to put in is this bush of roses, and we're going to cut most of those off. I will leave one on the stem just so I can use the height of that basic stem and get one of those roses up kind of high. Maybe we'll even put 2 of them on there. So here's what I've done. You can see that I've left 2 on that stem. Now, one of the things that I don't like is a bunch of these leaves that I see the back of the leaf. So I'm going to trim just a few of those leaves off. I think it will give it a more natural appearance so that we trim those away that we see the back of the leaf too much. And I don't want too much foliage in there so that it takes away and hides the beauty of the arrangement that we're doing. We want to create a little bit of space in there too. All right, so I'm going to come in on this corner, right in behind the Belle of Ireland there, and push this one in. That stem's thick, so I'm going to really have to get above it and push down in good and hard. But by leaving that on that thick stem, it gave us some height without us having to add an additional stem to it. Now, in order to keep these kind of clustered, I want to just let them stair-step down. I'm going to use one of the larger blooms down low, and maybe one even lower than that. So this one, I'm going to trim it all the way down. So that stem now is only about 4 inches long. That one I'll kind of let it face out. This one I'll twist it and bend it so that it faces more up. And the facing of the flowers is important too, because usually the flowers are going to pull toward the sun. So we want to kind of let that happen as we place these in. They can look out toward the sides somewhat, but many of them should be looking up and out. Occasionally, especially roses, because they're heavy, might even bend all the way over. And that really makes it look natural when we do that. If we trim this leaf away, then it really lets you see how that little head is just bent over. You see how having those different angles of the heads really give it a more natural appearance, much like it would be if it were growing out in the garden. And I heard one of my teachers that I respect a great deal many years ago said, the best floral designer is the one who studies nature. So if we really observe and study how flowers grow in nature, in our gardens, it really helps us with the placement so that we can place them in a way that is pleasing and authentic. And I strive to make sure as much as possible with manufactured products that we are creating something that is at least somewhat authentic. So here we've created this little grouping of roses. Instead of dispersing them throughout the arrangement, we've created just a cluster or a group of them here to the side. Now these leaves we may bring back in and use just for some cover, but I think those we probably will not need. And for me, I know if you are a DIYer and you love doing things, you may want to save this because you never know when that may come in handy. You could use this in another project if you needed a small leaf. For other people, it becomes trash, and then you've wasted your space and your time hanging on to it. So you have to make a decision of what works for you on that. The next thing I want to do is work with this bush of hydrangea, and we're going to use it for a lot of our basing material. And first thing I'm going to do is just harvest all of those, because we're going to use these all low. I'm going to harvest those from that central stem. Just take them all off, because most of these we're going to use lower in the arrangement so that it really helps us to base it in. So what I've done is has this large bloom with 3 of its leaves, and I can put that in here near the base of the arrangement and really finish that off right there in a very nice way. Then I can take one of the smaller blooms, and you'll notice that there is a variety of sizes with these blooms. And I want to trim just a couple of these leaves off so that I don't have so much foliage there, and bring that in on a level above here. Now, in order to create just a little more texture and interest, I can just take one of these grassy pieces and place that in, and just let that grass look like it's kind of growing up. Your grandmother may have had you out at one time or another weeding her garden. Well, we're purposely putting some of those weeds back in to get some authenticity in what we're doing here. All right, I'm going to just spin that a little bit more. I want to take another. This hydrangea bloom is not as large as that first one we put in, but I'm going to bring it over to this side and again kind of base in that area down low near the container. This one will be a little bit higher up. I'm going to trim a couple of those leaves so that we don't have so many. So it appears almost to just be growing right out of that space there. Going to continue around. I think maybe what we want to do is put this last hydrangea right in this space right here. So one of the things you can do is just take your stem and put it down into the container until it hits styrofoam. And you know, yep, that's about the length I need it to be. But these leaves are too thick, so I'm going to trim some of those leaves off. Again, we don't want it overpowering. You don't want foliage covering up flowers. So in this one, I think I may just take that whole bloom off so that the flower really shows up better. All right, so that kind of fills in that space nicely. And as you see, it's starting to fill up all the way around. I'm going to give it a turn here. I have this other group of kind of a wild rose. I'm going to cut those apart. And I may leave just one on that stem so I can get it up just a little bit higher. Again, I'm going to trim away some leaves just so that we don't have the foliage so thick that it's hiding flowers behind it. And see, just by thinning that out, it looks a lot more natural. Again, we can kind of let those bend just a little bit the way they would if they were in the garden. That heavy rose head may bend just a little bit under the weight of its bloom. Okay. Continually just trim them, trim some of that excess foliage, probably taking almost half of the foliage off of those as we go. Now this one has two heads on it, so I'm going to take one off and separate it. I'm going to get rid of that leaf at the bottom, and that gives me two that are fairly short stemmed. I'm going to just cut that off here. Two of those that are fairly short stemmed, and I can come in right near the bottom and place those. When we're finishing out the bottom, we often call that basing. So what I'm doing here now is kind of basing it in and make sure that all of my mechanics and the bottom edges of the arrangement are covered. So you can see with this one, there is going to be some excess foliages that you don't need to use. I think what I will do here is just let one of these little blooms kind of pop off, because sometimes in the garden things may run over into the space of another plant. So I've let that rose just kind of run over to the space of the other plant there. Now we have one last flower, and then we have foliage that we're going to use to base it in real well with. So I think what we'll do for this purple bloom is just kind of create an opening here beside the hydrangea and bring that right in here. Now I'm going to take all of those, or most of these, off of the stem. I may leave about 3 on the stem just so that I have a little bit of height. I'm going to place those in right next to my taller cluster of flowers and just press it into the styrofoam. And then sometimes I will take those plants or those flowers and leaves and just push them up the stem so that they kind of crown out at the top and not have it all the way down the stem, especially for putting in near the bottom. So that crunch is good when it's going into the styrofoam. You know that it's getting in, going to be real tight and secure in the space we're putting it. I'm going to turn that a little bit so I can see what we've got here. We want to straighten that This one up just a little bit. I'm going to put one more right into this space. All right, and now I think I'm going to go around to the other side of the arrangement and just put a little mini cluster of those over here, as if either we have a second planting or if maybe some of them have just kind of wandered over here. Now we still have a couple of branches of grass or pieces of grass, so have a spot here I think would benefit from the grass. I'm going to put that right in there. You can see how this all looks like it's just kind of growing together in a pretty flower garden. This is the kind of flower garden we all wish we had in our backyard, but most of us don't have time to make it happen. So we can have a mini version inside our home. The nice thing with these wired stems is we can pick and twist and poke and work with them until we're happy with the finished product we have. So this is the placement on the flowers. Now we're going to put just some of this Dusty Miller in place in order to give it that finishing touch. I'm going to harvest those right down next to the stem with my wire cutters. I'm going to pull that aside just a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. And again, just like I did with the little purple flower, I will push those up and kind of let those foliages crown out at the end of the stem, and that way we aren't losing leaves down below eye level inside the arrangement where you really get no impact from them. I love the softness of this light green or whitish green foliage. I think it is a wonderful contrast to some of those dark foliages that are kind of smooth and shiny. This gives you something very dull, matte, and light, and it blends nicely with this, especially the thistle, but also the light green of that Belle of Ireland up there. Okay, so we have most of these done where we've pulled that bottom layer of foliage up and kind of let it crown out at the top and take full advantage of every leaf that we have. So I'm just going to mainly put these around the bottom edges. And there's probably enough for us to put 2 or 3 insertions on each side of the container. Some I can put above the floral line and some below the floral line, here below, here above. But it really tends to finish it off and kind of tie all those products together so that you end up with a cohesive, although a little bit of a wildflower style. It blends together perfectly. The wonderful thing about an arrangement like this, it can be used in so many places. Now often I would not use something like this as a centerpiece on a table unless it's going to be taken off for meals, because we either go long and low as a centerpiece for a table, but if you were going to do something like this on a table, it would be beautiful with a pair of candlesticks on each side, so it would fill it out and kind of lengthen it. But it would work really well anchoring one end of a credenza with a pair of candlesticks at the other end, or maybe a lamp. Would work well on a fireplace, creating an anchor on one end and maybe another decorator element on the other end. So there are a lot of ways this could be used in the home or in a commercial application. I hope you've enjoyed that, and I hope you'll join me for more tutorials on floral design on myfloraldesign.com. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. I encourage you to browse the library of arrangements and videos on our website, myfloraldesign.com.